Hey, I'm Cyclon, and today we're going to look at the Aurabot guide for the 3.17 Siege of the Atlas and Arch Nemesis League. So with the next league, we are going to have some changes for the Aurabot. The most significant is that March of the Legion got nerfed, and that was our way to get a lot of free auras. So now we have to adapt it, we have to adjust it a bit. We're losing a bit of survivability, but we're still able to fit many auras, and I've not just provided one, I have actually provided two full build guides for two different variants of the Aurabot. One is more on the focus for survivability, and the other one is more for aura effectiveness and trying to fit as many auras as possible. Now there is a point third one, or like half of a full build. It's the variant. It's a low life variant for the other one, for another one, which fits a fewer auras, but I think it's not really that good. I just wanted to include it for those who want to play that specific variant for the Aurabot. So what do we have? We have the maximum aura effect Aurabot. If we take a look at that Aurabot, we are doing some specific interactions. First thing that is going to be very new is the Covenant. I have watched SnapO's video for Aurabotting in big groups, and I've then tinkered around with it myself after he mentioned that they can fit that with everything. So basically what this does, it makes every skill gem inside of it having blood magic. Now blood magic without any negatives, any additional stuff on it, because the new arrogant support would increase the aura reservation cost a bit. So with this, we are fitting more auras, but we are low life. So how are we dodging, or how are we enabling that chaos damage does not bypass our energy shield? And this is going to maybe scare some people off. We are using the Overflowing Chalice. The Overflowing Chalice basically gives us CI. It sets our maximum our health to run, and we are. Oh wait, sorry, not Overflowing Chalice. The Coressenting Elixir. I completely brain deaded that. The Elixir sets our max life to run, and we are. The life we moved is regenerated energy shield. We ignore that, but chaos damage cannot bypass energy shield. Now this is a flask. How are we actually able to sustain that? We will adjust a few more things on the build. We are going to be an Ascendant. We are going to take the Pathfinder Ascendant Ascendancy, and we are going to select Flask Wheel. And finally we're going to have on our build 1 to 2 Flask Charge stuff. Either increase duration, less flask charge used, or more flask charge gained, and it can be infinitely automatically sustained with the reuse at full or reuse at the end. I think I would reuse at the end, so you can, when you enter the map, you click it once, you start it, then automatically redo itself. With the use at full, the first time the use at full is when the enemy enters the screen or about around that time. So that is a bit more dangerous, I would say, with that. Also, we are not having as much survivability on our flask because of that, but I will come to that later. The other very new, very interesting interaction we are going to use on actually both builds is that the new support gem Divine Blessing can basically make the reservation of an aura into mana cost again, like it used to before. So what we can do with that, we can use Vault Clarity or Lavinia Spirit to basically say for the short duration we have no mana cost. So we are using that, we are using the blessing, we have like 20 to 30 seconds where it's up, and Lavinia Spirit has charges, so you need to quickly consume some of your mana. Use that, use the blessing before your mana hits full again, and Lavinia Spirit is done, because it cannot, it doesn't have the enduring tag. I think it's okay enough with Vault Clarity and Lavinia Spirit, which we can use 7 times, and we have a Flask Ascendancy, which gives us 1 charge every second. I think this is good enough. it should be good enough for bosses, and for mapping your carry kills enough, that is good for you. So with that, we're getting a free aura still. We're not getting 3 free hours or 4 free hours, but 1, it's still good enough. I still like it. Okay, that are the interactions that we want to use. Now, why would you want to use, or for who is the max aura effect bot? Well, this one has more easy time reaching higher levels. Right now it's at 85, but we can push the reservation further by going more aura effect. We are focusing on having as much aura effect as possible on this, and we are focusing on having as many offensive aura as possible on this. So this is more for people who want to very efficiently push towards the end game and have the intended goal on maybe farming invitations, farming 100% delirious maps, farming simulacrum. So for those who have the intention to very quickly reach the end game and then farm that end game. This is a bit more pricier than the survival focused Aurabot, because we want to use an unnatural instinct, we want to use a militant phase. Both very on can be quite pricey. Well, this one actually gets pricier the later you go, more normally, and this one is very early on, quite pricey, and then drops. But we are also needing a 5-link, and potentially we need a corrupted 5-link with a +2 AoE or aura on the Covenant, just so we have more max resistances. But it's still doable. Like, we are not that pricey on other items. We can, the clusters aren't that pricey. This one can be self-ward, we're using it 4 times this one. So it's still doable. But I'm jumping ahead. Let's first take a look at the Ascendency. For our Ascendency, we are going to opt in for the Necromancer to give attack and cast speed per aura. We are using almost every aura we can use, reserving everything but 5% of our life and 10% of our mana. And we are using the Pathfinder to gain 3 flask charges every 3 seconds, so that we can infinitely easily sustain our flask. Because they are not normal flask, we cannot use the Sinners or any other that would give it flask charges when we are hit. So it is the best option to consistently sustain our flask charges, and we gain a bit of extra movement speed, which is always nice to have. That is pretty much the Ascendency. Now, of course, I guess I should mention that here. We used to go Guardian before, or if I want to have the maximum effect, why not Champion, why not a Duelist anymore? So because of how the tree currently works, we want as many passives as possible. We want to kill all bandits, that's why, and that's why we want Scion for more passive points. And we could go Champion, but Champion, I would say, is only really good if your carry already has an insane amount of attack speed and is an attacker. So you can give him 20% increased damage taken on the enemies with the taunting and the intimidate on full life. But the full life is not always that easy, because the carry will, so that would mean you need, when the enemy gets targetable, you attack the enemy, you intimidate him, then the carry starts attacking the enemy. The issue there is if the carry would attack at the same time as you do, maybe he deals damage before you hit him, so it's not as consistent. Like, it is a doable option for those who say, we have enough attack and cast speed, attack speed, we want it in damage. Champion is a valid option. For this maximum aura effect build, I would say Pathfinder is locked in, so you would need to switch out of Necromancer for that. And the other option would be the Guardian. The Guardian, we wanted to have the physical damage reduction, and we wanted to have the 20% life regeneration and the onslaught when the carry plays some minions or we put some zombies in. It is nice to have, it's a nice utility thing, it keeps you alive more. But again, this one is more focused on people who have some mechanical knowledge as well, learn quickly how the boss patterns are, and can dodge a bit themselves. They have still a good amount of survivability, but they don't have the regeneration anymore, so you will rely on Vol Discipline and not getting hit for a moment to recharge your energy shield. I would still say quite good, I like it, it's very, very nice, but in this case, this is the most efficient for damage. And then other options you can take Guardian and Champion. So that are the Ascendency. Let's take a look at the rest of the tree. We have a leveling section In this case, you would start with the Stormblast Mine with Orb of Storms. You would then switch to Traps, and later on get your Aura nodes, and around end of Act 3, beginning of Act 4, after you don't need to do the first lap there, but after you picked up Generosity, you can say, okay, I'm going to use my auras now, and I'm going to stick with the Aurabot. For that, we would check the nodes. Here's explained that at this point in Act 3, Act 4, you can grab the Generosity, have a Swy, Generosity, 1 offensive aura or 2 offensive auras. You could pick up Grace instead if you want more survivability. Early on, you don't need that much offensive. Grace is a really nice thing to have, in my opinion. So then you are fully an Aurabot. You can play with your carry in the same instance. Before that, I would say just go for Master Zapper, then just pick up Pirate Killer and travel up here. And then all 3 Aura nodes start with Influence, then Leadership, and lastly Charisma. After you've picked up Influence, of course, also pick up the Reservation Mastery here. And after that, you can already respec the Master Zapper nodes. And we are going to pick up some more life. We're going to pick up Written in Blood, Melding, and then we're going to pick up Purity of Flesh, and lastly Serenity for the last Aura node. Sorry, I skipped a step. First we pick up the life here, then we pick up the life here and go over here. And then pretty much just finishing the core structure, more masteries, Evasion Mastery, Vitality Mastery, Reflexes, so we have the Grace. And over here we pick up Divine Shield. We should have a bit of Energy Shield at this point, so that we can utilize the shield, and maybe you used Determination instead of Grace at this point. Could be good, maybe it's not good enough and you would just use Flasks for that. Also, we pick up a Jewel Socket at some point once we get Conqueror's Efficiency. Keep in mind that when you play with a carry, you both get a Conqueror's Efficiency. Wall one, if it breaks, don't wall the other yet, just use it. If the one doesn't break and has any implicit, wall the other and use the better implicit. Later on, try to get a Reservation Efficiency here. It should be pretty cheap and almost free. And there you go, that is that. After that, we want the other Jewel Sockets, and then energy from within here. Later, intuitively peer. This might be a bit pricier early on, so you might need to wait a bit before grabbing that. You can also pick here. You should get a free gem, a free jewel in Act 5. You can use that. You can use that here. And then we go for clusters. With the clusters, finishing 2 large clusters. So should have Veteran Defender and then either Prodigious Defender or Strike Leader. Those should be the 2 that put Veteran Defender in the front position, and then small clusters with 25% increased effect. And it would be awesome if you can get Flat ES, any tier, or get Intelligence, or pretty much anything that adds survivability. But honestly, just roll for increased effect, augment Regal, and you're done. And to finish up the trio, we pick up some more Energy Shield and some more small stuff, and that is pretty much the Aurabot tree. After that, 94. As soon as we can, Militant Phase, Unnatural Instinct, more Aura effect. On this variant, we do pick up Asylum to gain Chaos Resistance. Because we are not CI anymore, we want our Chaos Res kept. That's why we use a Flask, and we will get some Chaos Res in the gear too. And then level 100 doesn't change too much. It just some minor adjustments for more stats, for more survivability. If we now take a look at the skills, what actually are we packing in here? We have our offensive auras, which we will use in the helmet, Res, Zealotry or Hatred. Of course, you can adjust it as you want, as needed for your carry. Maybe you don't even need 3 offensive auras, maybe then the survivability focus would be more interesting. But again, this is more highly efficient, so we use 3 offensive auras and Awaken Generosity as soon as we can grab it. Before that, of course, normal Generosity. We are going to use that in the helmet, because it has +2 and possible +4 to gems, so even more damage, of course. And then we use 1 more offensive aura, in this case Anger, Malevolence, Pride, whatever works. You could use Haste 2, of course, if Anger isn't efficient enough or it doesn't really give much to your carry. Haste is a good option too. We use 1 Blessing aura, which will be linked to Blessing. If we have a free link there too, we can add another Generosity here. Then on our life, because of the Covenant, we reserve the 3 purities and determination. We might need to use Enlightened level 2. You can see, sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. This is going to be very specific on your level and on the amount of flat life you have maybe randomly on gear. So there you might need to use Enlightened level 2. I don't think you will need a level 3. As with this on level 94, with the 2 seems to be fitting. I don't think I have any life on my gear, so that should work. Then we use Grace, Discipline, Defiance Banner on our mana, and we also use Clarity, Vitality, and Precision on our mana. Of course, if you don't have enough reservation yet, you can keep the flat auras a bit lower, because they're going to be more mana efficient the higher level you are, as you get a bit of base flat mana every level up. If we can, we want to fit a Molten Shell or Wall Molten Shell cast more damage taken setup. Pretty much any level, either a 110 or up to 2020. I think what I would do most of the time, or I really like to do, is keeping it at level 7, which doesn't really increase Molten Shell level too much. It's only up to level 14 then. Is it? No, wait. Up to level 13. But it's a bit more, and when you take a hit of 1000, then you know, okay, something went wrong, I took a bigger beating, Molten Shell is a good thing to proc now. Of course, you could also remove the cosmic damage taken, just use it as a 2020, have Molten Shell maybe on left click and wall Molten Shell somewhere else, but it's not too much needed. Then we also want to use Smite. We're going to link it with faster attacks, and then either Generosity or Culling Strike. A Culling Strike just because culling, a bit faster killing big stuff. Maybe needed. If it's not needed, Generosity here is fine too. And we use a 1-link Flame Link or Soul Link. Pretty much just any link can go here. I would recommend those two. Taking damage off from our carry is nice, or giving him a flat fire, which is almost as good or better than Anger. And then we have Flame Dash. That for the skill section. And the items, there is not too many differences. We are going for maximum efficiency. So we're going to use a Wakakuki or Matua. We don't know where it will drop yet. Oh no, we actually do know, but we don't know how often it will drop. Because of the prophecy changes, this one will randomly drop from endgame bosses. We don't know if those will just be map bosses or going to be the big bosses, which will further entice you to kill bosses with your carry. Just going to give you non-curse aura effect. On the weapon, we're going to use a Thermal Edge, or we're going to use Sign of the Sin Eater. Sign of the Sin Eater is pretty interesting, as it grants level 30 Smite, and it's going to take the irons from your allies. You can be immune to Frost with Brine King, and you could roll Shock Immunity on the Amethyst Flask. Then you Ignite Immunity on the Quicksilver Flask, and you would be fully Ultimate immune, or you could try to fit Purity of Elements somewhere. Maybe on the Blessing support, then without Generosity. So you would then, but with that you wouldn't even need to take the elements off your carry anymore. So they are adjust according to your needs. I personally like the Thermal Edge because it gives 50% up to 50% increased ES, which is always nice to have. On the helmet, I would still recommend the Alpha Soul. Getting it with +2 to AoE or +2 to Aura always is fairly cheap. No, of course not cheap as in Few Chaos, but cheap as in 1 to 2 exalts most of the time. It also gives a bit of cold rest, and now it also gives Cannot Be Frozen, so once we have the Alpha Soul, we don't need Brine King anymore, and we can pick up Lunaris, Solaris, or Arakali, however we need, or we can still keep the Brine King for the Cannot Be Stun Chained. Everything of that is an okay option. As for the body armor, like I already mentioned, Covenant with either +2 AoE or +2 to Aura Gems, and on the gloves, I really like the Shaper's Touch. Of course, early on it might be too pricey. You can use any energy shield gloves, or you could use Vixen's Entrapment, which is a unique that costs a few chaos and has a good amount of flat ES. On the boots, we can use the Skyforce. Because we are not going with the Guardian Ascendancy, we can use Skyforce as we are not really regenerating anything with the life, we are not even picking up the Zealot's Oath. It's giving us some movement speed, mana, and also it resolves stun issues, so now we really don't have any use for the Brine King Ascendancy anymore once we have Skyforce and we have the Alpha Soul. As the amulet, this is pretty much locked in, Jinx, Juju, Aura effect, and we have increased effect of curses if we need to use one. But really just Chaos Breath is nice to have, Aura effect is nice to have, and it gives strength stacks and intelligence. Really an amazing amulet. Of course, we're going to anoint the last Aura wheel we cannot reach, which is Champion of the Cause. On our rings, we want energy shield, then any amount of strength, dexterity, and chaos resistance. If we have a prefix to craft, we can craft minimum endurance charges, or pretty much whatever fits, and we would like to have it any amount of energy shield as a prefix. And for catalyst, we can use defense catalyst, or we can use stat catalyst. For the build, I already mentioned earlier, we want any modifier that interact with flasks. Any 2 would be best, if only 1 would still be okay. Also, we can get some strengths here, of course, why not? For the modifiers that we want is flask charge gained, reduced flask charge used, or increased flask duration. And we want more energy shield, because energy shield is awesome. As for our flask, I already mentioned we want a quicksilver and an amethyst flask. We want an overflowing chalice and Coressenting Elixir. Everything of those with either trigger at full life, or for the Coressenting Elixir reuse at flask ending. Should be fine. Those should be a few bubbles and a few what was it, Indescending Orb? I don't remember the name. And as our 5th flask, we want the Lavinia Spirit. If you say you don't need the blessing if it doesn't work, or you say your Void Clarity is enough, you don't need Lavinia Spirit and can use any other flask, I think I would recommend the Flat Armor Flask or the More Armor Flask. Either are fine for me. But I would say Lavinia Spirit, just have it there. Just if you need to re-reserve your Blessing Aura, use that. For the classes I already mentioned, the jewels already mentioned. There is one more. We are going to use Conqueror's Potency on top of Conqueror's Efficiency, which early on I would just say everybody take Conqueror's Efficiency. And if you level a second character or buy one Conqueror's Potency off the market, and hopefully with the +2 might miss a 2% reservation efficiency, might be a bit more pricey. If that is the case, you might need to take it without and get the reservation efficiency somewhere else. Or if you need the reservation efficiency, just take a rare one with any amount of aura, any amount of ES. This one we really just used for the 3% increase effect of non-curse auras and the increase effect of flasks, of course, why not? More jewels I already mentioned. And that is about the item section. Now, as a final show what this actually does. If we go to configuration, you see that enemy hit damage, we assume you take a 5k hit. And if that 5k hit, you have an effective hit pool of over 100,000 for physical, over 200,000 for fire, cold, and lightning, and over 100,000 for chaos. I would say this is pretty tanky. This is more tanky than the Arcana Miner, which I played back in Ritual League, which was one of the best boss killers in that league. I would say the Aurabot can survive quite a lot. And for recovery, like you took the damage and now how you regain your S, you have Void Discipline, you have, once you're not getting hit for a while, you recharge your ES, and you have Divine Shield, which will recover ES up to the level of armor, but as you can see, armor 36k, ES 6k, 6.7k, would be more than enough, and some of the physical damage you mitigated is regained as mana. Normally endgame bosses have a good mix of physical and non-physical damage, so I think this should be more than fine. So that is the maximum aura effect support. Let's take a look at the other support, at the survivability focused support. For the survival focused support is really only a few changes. We are not taking as much aura effect and we are not taking as much auras, but instead we are going to focus on having more survivability. We have the same cluster setup, we have almost the same passive tree setup. We are picking up Wicked Ward though, so that once our recharge starts we are not losing it anymore. And for the Ascendancy, we're sticking to the Guardian because of the 20% regeneration every 4 seconds for a second is super awesome. And then for the other one, we can pick up Champion, we can pick up Necromancer, and we can pick up Pathfinder. However, we don't really need the Pathfinder, we are not relying as much on our flask. We are CI here, so I would say either pick up Champion or Necromancer, whatever fits better. Necromancer, again, if your carry wants to take or cast speed, it's good. It also gives you the ability to use a cast when damage taken setup, Desecrate, Bone, what was it? Bone Sacrifice? Bone Offering, that was the word. Bone Offering to get some block and spell block, it's nice to have. And it gives you a bit of AoE whenever your cast when damage taken triggers, because you consume corpses with that then. Ascendency aside, the passive tree, of course, here with leveling as well. We are going to pretty much do the same. Really just the same, except that we are going to pick up CI eventually. And we are going to not pick up on a node the life reservation efficiency of skills. And when we finish the tree, we not forcing ourselves to go for the militant phase. However, we can still do that, of course. There's nothing stopping us from picking up militant phase, unnatural instinct, and going on our effect on this variant too. This one really just is more, we don't need it that much. It's still nice to have. We can go for it later on, but I will focus on getting up all the survivability first. And once we have that, we are good to go. Here too, we are going to pick up Essence Extraction with the Flask charge gain, with the Mastery for the Mana Flask gains a charge every 3 seconds. This we do so we have the Mana Flask in boss fights. We are using 7 charges, and hopefully then we have 30 seconds before we need to reuse it. So with that we have infinite Flask charges for the Lavinia Spirit. So we have infinite amount of our Blessing Aura, as long as we just use the trick, use the mana, use the Flask, and then use the blessing, and you're good to go. Really not much difference on the tree outside of that. On the level 100 version we just pick up Utmost Intellect. This gives us actually, now if you compare that to Unnatural Calm for 5 points gives us 476 ES and 737 evasion. Now Utmost Intelligence gives us 435 ES and 5.7k evasion. That's a good amount of evasion. I really like that more, so I picked that. Of course, you can pick up any other ES on the tree that you find. I don't say you have to do this, I just recommend it. As for our skill section, we are using Purity of Ice, Fire and Lightning in our helm this time. The Enlightened is not really needed that much. If you take a look here, we want to aim about 50 mana, so I have an Enlightened 3 here, but it's not needed. You can just adjust the flat auras. Where are they? We are here using Vitality and Clarity. You can just adjust the level there early on, or you can improve the clusters. You can get 2% reservation somewhere. There are a lot of options. You don't have to use an Enlighten. In our body armor, which is in this case a Victorious Influence, we are using Zeal Tree and our Smite. Now if we push our reservation far enough, we can fit a second offensive aura here, and we can in a separate link, so it's we need to keep in mind that the blessing is actually only able to use on 1 aura. So if we would go on a 6 link, if we take a look in game, we would need a 2 link with blessing and rest, then a 2 link with fast attacks and smite, then Zeal Tree, and on the last spot we could fit maybe Hatred. So that we can fit all the auras, but a blessing is only linked to 1 aura and they all affect by generosity. Or we can use the blessing on something else with normal generosity, and in the Victorious Influence we use Awakened Generosity with 2 offensive auras later on. Both are okay, it's just more easy as you don't need a 6th link and you still have everything on generosity. More efficient. We are using Shield Charge then in our weapon with faster attacks and again Culling Strike or Fortification if that works again, but I doubt it. So Culling Strike just because utility. On our utility auras we want to use Vitality and Clarity, again Bold Clarity and a Defiance banner. And we are using a shield. Oh, that was a mistake. Good to know. This should make our reservation way easier. Sorry for that. On our shield we use Determination, Grace and Discipline because the socketed gems have 30% increased reservation efficiency. With that I did the mistake. We don't need this at all. We have 4% 69 mana. Perfect. No need to change anything. We decked what I said earlier. You're good to go. No enlightenment needed. So on our shield, we are using the big auras. We are not utilizing anything more there. Just Wall Discipline so we can recharge. You can use Grace or Wall Grace, but you already have a lot of buttons. I would say normal Grace is good enough. Wall Grace just gives you a flat chance to dodge. If you take a look, Wall Grace is 29% more evasion rate, unrelated to normal Grace, 50% chance to evade attack hits, and suppress spell damage dealt to you is unlucky. However, we only have a 13% chance to suppress spell damage, so I would say normal Grace or Wall Grace either is fine. We also have here the custom damage tank setup as mentioned, with Desecrated, Bone Offering and Void Molten Shell. It's again on level 7 and level 13, so we want to have as much survivability as possible. We're getting hit, we activate Desecrate and Bone Offering, so we're not getting hit again hopefully. And we have Molten Shell with Void Molten Shell if we get hit again, so maximum survivability. And then we have Flame Dash and Anti-Link again. And then we have some empty slots that we can adjust according to our needs. That for the skills section. Items already pretty much took everything away. We again using a Thermal Edge or a Sign of the Sin Eater, whatever you prefer. Over here for saving jewel spots, I would say a Thermal Edge and use Smite into Victorious Influence. We use the shield. I would force roll it for the increased reservation efficiency, which is a suffix, and then pretty much just say, okay, Reforge keep suffix, or suffix can be changed. Reforge defenses until it's any good with defenses, or maybe you even got lucky with some with the augment and the regal. It just have about 250 to 310 or something energy, or more of course. But just so that the veteran defender you're using gives you a good chunk of ES on top. As you can see, removing the shield will reduce my energy shield by 1.7k, which is absolutely insane. And it's just 280 ES. On the Alpha Soul, of course, we want the +2 Aura or +2 AoE. Not pretty much anything else. Victorious Influences, try to get the non-cost Aura effect as high as possible. Again, Shaper's Touch, Vixen Entrapment or whatever. Here, as boots, we don't want to use Skyforce, because Skyforce will remove our life regeneration. We have Zeolot's Oath, we return our life in ES regeneration. So we want to use either Syntrack, or what you could do is to use March of the Legion and use the offensive aura in there, and then use your utility stuff in there, so that it blessing only affects the one aura you want to use with that, as the March of the Legion gives it a 25 divine blessing, if I remember correctly, and it gives +4. So the aura in there would be quite a lot stronger. It can be worth it, but not needed. And Syntrack gives you a lot of evasion and energy shield, almost 1k ES and almost 6.5k evasion. We want again Jinx Juju, same as the other one, Intelligence, Chaos Rest, Strength, Dexterity, increase effect of non-cross aura, absolutely perfect for this build. On the rings we don't care about Chaos, so we instead can take more resistances. We need about 30% Fire, Cold and Lightning res, and the rest will be carried by our purities of Lightning, Fire and Ice, and then of course Stats and Energy Shield. And our belt, we can pick up strength and more energy shield and even more energy shield. For our flask, and this is why this one is more survival focused, we are using a Jade, a Stibnite, a Granite and a Basalt, all with Sinner, so we gain charges when we are hit, for maximizing our evasion rating and our armor. Just like as you can see. Of course it's just Blood Aqueducts, but I'm not taking any damage, and in most maps it is the same. You can survive so much. Only very hard content this league was able to kill my build, like Maven, a memory game fail, or a Simulacrum wave 28+. It was really amazing, and even with the loss in survivability by adjusting this, we are still pretty good, which we still will see in a moment once we enter the Colks. And then of course Lavinia Spirit for the set interaction, and here we just use energy from within, intuitive leap and Conquest efficiency. As for other jewels, which we have one spot here, pretty much just energy shield and reservation efficiency, or like again you could use Militant's Face. You could select more passives in this area with full survivability, and then spec into the unnatural instinct again. But in this case, as it's just meant to be as cheap as possible, it should cost almost maybe an exalt, maybe 2 exalts. Most of the items are pricey at the first 2 days, then drop super heavily before they steadily increase again. So there is a sweet spot where you have enough currency to buy it, and the Aurabot suddenly explodes. And if you craft a bit yourself, it's not going to be any pricey. Last league in Scourge, my Aurabot I made for 4 exalts with the amazing shield and the amazing body armor, which are 2 exalts of the 4 exalts cost. So it was super crazy how cheap it was. And that is the survival focused Aurabot. If we now take a look at nodes configurations again, 5k enemy hit damage and calculation, almost 200k physical, almost 200k elemental, and of course infinite damage with sustain, effective hit pool against chaos. This is insane how much it can tank. Even if we disable the cast when damage taken setup, because it's not always active, we are at 100k, 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 100k. It's still pretty awesome, and you're never going to get a hit for infinite amount of damage outside of stuff like the memory gate or similar, which we might get, we don't know. But I think this one is really good at survivability, and if you are not used to pushing endgame content super quickly and killing the new bosses in the matter of days, then this will be really amazing, because you and your buddy who plays as a carry can enter the boss fight and have a bit more error room. You can do more mistakes without dying, and you can learn the boss calmly and look at his pattern, look what he does, and have fun fighting the boss while you're not dying, because you're giving insane tankiness. Now, of course, there was a third option, I mentioned it earlier, the low life Aurabot, again with leveling stuff. I just haven't made the trees as decently. It is pretty much again Guardian and then either Necromancer or Champion. We are picking up not CI, instead we're going for Asylum, Essence Extraction again, of course, and then Aura Effect, Life with Mana Preservation Efficiency and Life Preservation Efficiency. It is a mix of the two, as this one we are using either the Chevron's Wrappings or the Solaris Concourse, not Concourse, Solaris Lorica. That was the body armor, which is basically a budget Chevrons, and the rest is the same. We are using Sintrek or Lavinia and Sintrek or Skyforce, but Skyforce again would disable your regeneration, so Sintrek I would recommend, and you just tank a lot. Prison Guardian for the big auras instead of this, because it also gives 30% reservation efficiency and preserves them on life, so more efficient preserving. And it's just hitting a few more auras, but it has the worst survivability of them all. If we enter enemy hit damage of 5k, it is not as good at all as the other two. So if you say you want to go with this Aurabot because you got a Chevron's dropped, go for it. But I would say either go for the maximum aura effect if you want to push the content far and would say about yourself, hey, I'm quite good mechanically, I can dodge a lot of the bosses, I already know a lot of the existing boss patterns, me and my buddy, we are both good players, we're going to push the end game, we are going to destroy it. Or take the survival focused Aurabot if you say, I want a more casual approach, we are going to have fun running a few maps, we're going to have fun killing the bosses, but we are not that good that we can just say, okay, we're going to one-shot any boss, doesn't matter what counts at us. Or, of course, you can pick up the other in that case too, but do it at your own risk. These are my recommendations for these two Aurabot builds. You will find them in the description. Hopefully, as this video was quite long, I will now directly go and make chapters in this. All that being said, I hope this was very informative. If you're going to play Aurabot, let me know in the comments what you're going to play and what build your carry is going to play. And if not, tell me what you're going to play either way, because I'm curious. I still haven't fully decided what I start myself. All that being said, have a great day.